I'll just put it up an okay photo because then when they meet me, they'll be like, oh, she's actually looks better than her photo. Hi, we are Bec and Vern from Rekindling Relationships.
Welcome to our podcast designed to help couples and parents create a more loving, healthy and fun relationship together.
Our aim is to support couples to better communicate as well as help them navigate the tricky aspects of relating.
As well as creating fun dates and creative workshops, we mentor couples and individuals.
Hope you enjoy our podcast and it helps your relationship to thrive. Hi everyone.
Hey everyone.
And today we're going to talk about dating in your 40s and 50s.
It's pretty relevant because we're in our 40s and 50s and we've been through the day. Just in or just out?
I want to talk about it.
And we know how hard it is to actually date as you get older.
Well, we've both done it in that age range, haven't we?
We both have. And it's a tricky terrain to navigate because I know for, I guess, a lot of people I'd say a lot of other people out there in their 40s and 50s, this is probably second chance, third time. Who knows? Who knows how many times they've been out there afterwards, they've had a relationship and then that relationship's over. Or maybe they've just been serial dating their whole lives. They haven't really found that person. It
was a lot trickier than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
I enjoyed it, because I enjoy meeting people, but it was more complicated and people had more baggage than I thought they would have.
Oh, really?
Would often come into the relationship.
So what was the tricky part about dating for you?
There was a few things. I think quite often with online dating, because I tried that. I think the distance, because quite often it was people in Melbourne. That,
and we live in Bendigo, so it's like a couple of hours away. Yeah,
I found hard. I think, that aspect of that people would bring a lot of stuff into the space.
When you say into the space, is that once you started going out as opposed to dating, or is that in the dating space when you were meeting each other? And
I always try to ask a lot of questions before I delve too deeply into any kind of committed relationship. So, I try and take it slow.
Do you find that people ask enough questions?
No.
You're very good at asking questions, though. I've noticed that about you. You're very good at getting people to talk about where they're at and what they like. And you ask lots of questions. You've said to me that people don't ask questions back.
I think people also too make the mistake of moving too quickly before they've really got to know that person, and then they find themselves emotionally invested in that space, and then they're starting to get to know them and go, oh crap, our values actually don't align, or we've not got the same goals. And I think that's really important information to know before you get too wrapped up.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is that a first date question, second date question, third date question? Let's go through some questions, hey?
Let's do that.
Let's talk about these pre-dating sort of questions, or the things you talked about, the values. So, and that's a really important one. And I think, once you're older, maybe in your 20s and 30s, things are a little bit different for you because it's not about a committed relationship where you're going to, you're going to connect your finances and, we might have children together and all that sort of stuff. By your 40s and 50s, you might already own a house, or you'll have your own career. You might already have children through a previous relationship. So there's a whole lot of different things going on in there. So
can be quite complicated. What about you? What would be your non-negotiables at this stage?
I was back out in the dating scene, and I couldn't actually personally imagine being out in the dating scene because I'm actually really, we're really happy together.
Well, that was a really good answer.
Tip for men out there, just compliment and flatter constantly. I think a non-negotiable for me would be children. Together we have 4 teenagers between the ages of about 13, 14 and 17. And the idea of stepping into a relationship with someone with young kids would be really hard. If they had teenagers as well, I guess that would be okay. If they wanted to have kids, that would be a definite no. I feel like I'm just way too old.
Over the hill.
Oh, I just don't know if I could go through the whole... I don't think I'd go through the whole, broken sleeping and nappy changing.
Oh, you're at a different stage.
A different stage in my life. But I don't think a non-negotiable. I think, things that I want rather than things I don't want. And it would be someone who the children are teenagers or grown up. We have the same sort of long-term vision for our relationship, what we'd like to do in the future. I think that's really important. I'd like, the other person to be financially stable.
That can be a big one for people at this stage.
I think I'd like for them to have some sort of purpose or career or something they do in the world that they really enjoy. And that's really important to me because I really enjoy what I do. So I don't want to, it'd be hard for me to be with someone who just hates their job because I couldn't understand that. I'd be like, well, if you hate it, do something else. So maybe I'm looking for things which I really like about my own life and my own lifestyle. And then just projecting that onto a future date. How about you? What's a non-negotiable? Or what's a negotiable? Or what do you want?
Very similar things, I think. Honesty, kindness, good with their family. I think that they want to be committed. So, that would be a non-negotiable if they were into an open relationship for me. That would be like no, that's not my thing. That kind of commitment, I think, at this stage I would be looking for. Like you, that they have some kind of financial security, I think is important.
Are these important questions to ask? Probably not the first date, I'm guessing, because the first date you're really sort of getting to know each other. But, before you get to that date, I think it's important to know what those values and negotiables are. And you might not have never thought about them. It might just be something that you go, oh, this is what I'd like. But maybe stepping into that dating scene, if you're newly separated or you just, you're not with someone you want to get out there, you're looking to meet your match.
And how would people in their 40s and 50s find those people, do you think? What's the best way? Is online dating still a good option?
I think it might be. I've got a good friend who's in his 60s now, and he met his partner who's in her 50s, I think, online, and within a short time they were together and married, now living together and as happy as can be. So I think it can work. I think it's being really honest about who you are. Your profile's really honest. What you want is really honest. You're not making up crap. Because I think if you're making up crap, then you'll bring in people who they're looking for something else.
Yeah, I think being really clear about who you are and what you're looking for, and not like overly filtered photos. That always cracks me up. Guys don't tend to do this as much, but women do it all the time.
Do they really?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Oh, my God, cracks me up. Because in my mind, I was always a bit like, I'll put up an okay photo, a few okay photos, nothing too amazing or filtered or whatever. I'll just put up an okay photo because then when they meet me, they'll be like, oh, she's actually looks better than her photo. Well, you hope.
So you're sort of downplaying the expectations.
Because if you put up a photo where you've been all, done up and look amazing, they're going to expect that.
Heavy filter with like cat's ears and things like that.
Just like, they're going to, you're setting your expectations too high.
So if you're going to do an online dating profile,
be honest.
Use a nice shot, but not a over-the-top shot.
Yeah.
Be really clear in your profile.
Yeah, what your values are, what your interests are. I think having similar hobbies and interests are quite important.
Yeah, definitely. Who knows what your last relationship was like, but you probably want something different this time rather than what the same was. I don't think there's some relationships that are meant to be forever. I think some of them are just part of our learning along our way. And then maybe as we know each other better, know ourselves better, we understand ourselves in the world and what we need and want, then we're more likely to pull in the person who matches that at the same time as that person's pulling us in it as well.
Absolutely. Are there other ways that you can find a mate other than online if you're not comfortable with online dating or you've had so many poor experiences with it?
As a man, we don't talk about our relationships very much, and I've never spoken to a man about online dating.
Really?
Never. Because why? I don't, I did it.
It's quite entertaining for us women.
I did it a little bit and I hated it. I was like, I don't want to be spending my whole time texting different people. It was just exhausting. I was like, I don't know what, I'd rather not. Question was, what other ways can you meet people? It's a bit trickier now, isn't it? I think maybe it might have been easy for our grandparents who would wander off to a dance hall and meet people, Even for, I think when I was younger and you would go to clubs or nightclubs and people weren't too off their face. I think if you want to meet someone who likes the same things as you, then maybe you need to be getting out and doing those things.
I think you told me that once when I was out there dating.
Did I really? Did I
He
give you
did.
dating advice
Wise, yeah, he did.
before we were actually together?
Yeah, he
Tell-
gave me dating advice. He said, you should go and do the things that you're really interested in. So I did. I downloaded this app, which was called Meetup, and it wasn't a dating app at all. It was just, you picked all your hobbies you're really interested in. It might be hiking, bushwalking, whatever it be.
These were yours, yeah.
Other people would connect to that and arrange groups to go out on weekends and go for a hike. And so you'd meet up with other people.
So did you meet any dates doing that?
No, I actually didn't. No, the thing is, I was going to do some of the hikes, but I didn't actually end up getting there. And then, you know, long story short, life got busy and then eventually we ended up together. So,
But you did online dating before me, though, didn't you?
yeah, I did online dating.
Yeah, and how did it go for you?
Well, it was really good because at the time I didn't really have a community or many people. So it was a good way for me to get to know other people. It is an easy way to connect to other people.
Yep.
I do think that doing things like, it might be volunteer work, it might be connecting with people in the community who are, you know, doing things you're interested in doing, like bushwalking groups or whatever
it could be a sporting club.
If you find people doing the same thing you're interested in, that's always a really good way to get to know people.
Yeah, I've got a good friend who found their partner playing squash. Maybe that's the thing. If you're not doing anything, have a think about, would anyone really want to date someone who doesn't do anything? Because I think it's got to be two ways. You know, you might want to put yourself out to the world there, but if you don't live a very interesting life, if you're just home watching telly all the time on YouTube, on a screen, like not really actively doing something in the world, then I don't think that's giving yourself much of a life. But you're not really giving yourself the opportunity to meet someone who does like stuff you like. So you might be into cosplay, then you might just go to Comic-Con conventions. You might be really into chess, so you go to a chess club. You know, it's finding ways to get out there and meet people because, you know, online's fine. I think in your 40s and 50s.
In-person's better.
In-person's always better. The problem with in-person is that, you know, think about where do we go to socialise in person? It's pubs, clubs, like work social things. A lot of people meet their partners at work. And I can see why, because you've actually got time to spend in that space together. I think people have got so used to doing everything online that they've probably forgotten the art of the conversation as well.
What about speed dating events?
Speed dating events.
Have you ever done one?
No, I actually haven't. I haven't actually done a speed dating event. I know a friend of mine who does do them along the East Coast, but not regionally, more like major cities. They sound like a great idea.
Would you go to one?
If I was single? I think I would. I think I'd be a little bit reticent. It's like, oh, I guess there's that idea, the only people going to speed dating are people who are really lonely.
Yeah, I think there is that
mentality. That mindset.
That stigma. So why do you think there's a stigma? But what's the difference between getting online and looking for people and getting out and about and looking for people?
Nothing. The speed dating is actually harder because you've got to face-to-face see them. It's not just, you know, random messages and then you're messaging 10 different people through the night. And this is actually face-to-face. You've got to meet that person. So I don't know if that's my masculine thing. Like, I actually really like meeting people and talking to them, but maybe the idea of speed dating hasn't been done well in the past. So then, or the idea of it, I don't think it maybe hasn't been done well. It's more of you're like a meat market. Do you know what I mean? And you've got to put yourself out there all the time to different people, which you're right. That's what you do when you're looking for a relationship. How about you? Have you been to a speed dating event?
I have never been. I would jump at it.
Would you?
If I was out there in the world of dating, I would 100% go, what have I got to lose? And I love meeting people.
Then it makes me seem like speed dating is more for extrovert. If you're that sort of personality who likes to go out and likes to talk to people, you know, maybe that's not you. Putting yourself out to lots of people is maybe more for introverts. If you are someone who likes to put themselves out there, then you'll meet people who are like you, won't you?
What have you got to lose, though?
And that's true.
You could sit at home lonely watching Netflix, or you could meet people.
True.
Potentially find a partner.
How about for those people who are socially anxious? Like I'm saying about the introverts, how do they go to a speed dating night, or how do they deal with going out and dating with people? Because it seems that more and more people are socially anxious nowadays.
Look, I'm a big fan of pushing your comfort zone for growth. Might not be everyone's cup of tea, but what have you got to lose? Also, too, maybe looking at it being an adventure. Don't take it too seriously. Don't overthink it.
That would be probably advice for any date, not just a speed dating event, but any date is don't overthink it. I feel that men in general, except for, I'm quite confident in myself. I still get nervous in situations. And I read this book a long time ago called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, where when I feel a bit of anxiousness about something, then I go, oh, okay, that's a bit of anxiety, anxiousness, excitement mixed together.
Nice.
And that's okay, because that's not going to stop me. What that's going to do is it's going to grow me.
I actually remember on one of our first dates, you saying, I'm feeling a bit nervous, which was really interesting for me because you're such a confident person that I actually was like, oh, that's nice. He's actually feeling anxious. Like, as a woman, it made me feel, I guess, more comfortable in the space because you were feeling anxious, So I was like, oh.
Have you seen you?
You might be a bit biased, which I'm glad about.
I'm not biased. No,
so sometimes
men,
maybe...
See, another compliment.
Maybe voicing that, maybe say, oh, I'm actually really excited to meet you and I'm really looking forward to where this is going and just having fun. But I am feeling a little bit anxious. And I think everyone does. I think for the most part on those first dates, everyone has this little sense of nervousness and, some to more or less degrees. But isn't that part of the fun?
That's a really good point. I like how it's like when you speak to the emotion, then you take the energy out of the emotion.
You do. Instantly that other person views you as a bit more human. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, they're like me. They are feeling a little bit anxious too, or a little bit nervous.
I'll tell you one thing that people do when they're on a date and they're feeling a bit nervous, they talk non-stop.
Oh, yeah.
You've been on this, haven't you? Where they want to tell you everything about themselves and you might ask them a question and then off they go. And, it's a combination of maybe it's just ego, maybe there's nerves, but they forget that it's a two-way conversation and they should be asking the other person questions. It's got to be back and forth. It's got to be a dialogue. If you're so nervous that you talk too much or you don't talk at all, then you can just and go online and find a few questions that you can ask in that space to help the conversation go, because nobody wants to be monologued. And
most people love being asked about themselves and talking about themselves. So, that's always a good one. Ask about them, ask about their family, their life, what they do, what their hobbies are, all those things.
Yeah, find out if they want children. Really early. Find out. Do they have children? Do they want children? Do they want your children?
Well, that can be a deal breaker.
Take my children.
I always did this before a first date. I always set ground rules.
I was going to say, do you throw up or
no,
have a panic attack?
No.
Sorry, go on.
Not at all. In the scheme of things,
you're just shaking your head at me like, shut up and listen.
In the scheme of things, it's not a big deal. You're just meeting someone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not life or death.
No.
And where it goes is where it goes, I think not taking it too seriously. Sometimes I've found that people, when I've been on first dates, they get really serious really quick. And you're like, hang on, maybe we've just had coffee together. Having your babies. Yeah. So just keep it really simple.
Keep it fun.
And
keep
I
it
would
light.
say that. This is not everyone's cup of tea, but I felt like when I did this, A, men really respected it. And B, there was no expectations on the first date. So I would be like, hey, I don't even hold hands on the first date. So you're a complete stranger to me. We're just hanging out. I don't hold hands. So then if I don't hold hands, obviously I don't do any of the other things.
And you're not going to skip holding hands for anything else.
So there was no expectations. And I did have a few say, I had one date and he was like, walking me back to the car, and he was like, I'd really like to give you a kiss. And I said, no, I said I didn't do that on the first date. I always stuck by it. And I just found that was really good, and they really respected that.
Well, I think it's that knowing exactly where you stand is important, isn't it? During the date, you get to know each other, and if you seem to hit it off, then you might make plans for another date. But it's knowing, okay, well, let's take this slow, like you said. Let's take our time. And that's really important. I think none of us when you get to your 40s and 50s, if you've been through one or two relationships, or even, maybe three for me, are you right?
Just a few.
Then you just don't want to get burned again. And I think a lot of people maybe balk from the whole dating system. They just go, oh, I can't, it's too hard. I'm just going to go down the same old thing and end up with the same old trouble. And it's just going to be emotional stuff. And I think, being in a relationship is emotional, and it can be tricky sometimes. The other side of that is it's definitely worse being alone.
I think you also lower the risk of being burnt if you don't give yourself away too quickly. So as you get to know each other little by little, your guard will come down. It'll come down as you trust each other more. You get to know that person. You decide whether you want to spend more time with them. Just, I think, not giving too much of yourself away straight away. Just letting your guard down little by little as you get to know each other.
Yeah, I sort of do that with you. Like, I'm just like, no, you can't have me tonight. You're going to have to wait until tomorrow. Just keep you hanging on. That way, I'm going to keep you enticed by me.
This is not an edging podcast.
Oh. No, dating and edging.
This is the first date.
Oh, first date. Sorry. Let's get back on track, eh? Choosing a nice place to have a date. I think the first place you have a date is just coffee.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. Keep it during the day.
Nothing too serious. Keep it light. Even getting coffee and going and sitting in a park and like watching the ducks and just hanging out and having a chat. Super nice. You said something before, which was sometimes men fear rejection, and this might be why they would steer away from speed dating or dating in general. Tell me about that. How do they get over that? Get over it.
How do you get over it? Look, I think everyone fears rejection. I believe that when women are dating, then they're talking to their friends about how that is for them. The people they've met, they're talking about what it was like, they're talking about what that person said, and really, delving into it and probably gaining insight from each other, but also having a good laugh as well. They're processing the date afterwards. I don't know any man who sits down and talks to another man about a date they just had. So we'll go off on a date and then we'll come back and then we'll be like, oh, I think it went well, or oh, that went terrible. But if it went terrible, you sometimes don't know why. And if it went really well, you don't know how well, and you don't bounce it off other people. You don't chat to anyone about it. You don't talk about how the date was for you and what that person was like, which I think is really valuable. It gives you an opportunity to sort of get it clear in your head. So maybe because of that, men are a little bit more worried about being rejected. I don't think we are great at understanding dating. Relationships are also sometimes can be a little bit of an unknown to us. We're like, oh, what are we doing? How are we doing this?
So do they feel rejection on a first date though?
I think rather than feeling rejection on a first date is that they are worried about being rejected, so then they don't do anything. Like avoid dating, avoid complications, even though it seems like men do make the first move, I think that women actually make a lot of the first moves because they're the ones who will respond and how they respond. Do you know what I mean? The men will reach out, and if women respond in a certain way, then men feel safe enough to reach out again. Does that make sense? You're looking at me with a quizzical look, like you're like, where are you going and what are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm just curious about that.
Do women worry about rejection when it comes to dating? And
the fun and adventure of meeting a potential partner way outweighs for me any rejection. And even if it is a rejection, if it's in the very first stages, you haven't really invested much of your heart into it anyway.
So it doesn't matter?
Well, not really. Well, very logical way of looking at it.
I have to say it's really interesting.
Not emotional way.
It is. It's a bit logical, which...
Like there might be a little bit of disappointment, obviously, but you haven't invested too much in it. So
it's interesting because I feel like You know, as a man, if I get turned down for a job, I'm not too worried about it. But if I get turned down by a woman, then that just makes me go, oh, is it the way I talk? Is it the way I look? Is it the blah, 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 blah? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Would you rather know? So say, for example, a woman goes, oh, you know what, I'd rather not pursue it any further. Would you rather know why?
Oh, definitely. If I knew why.
I always tell them why.
Well, no, yeah, you do, but you're very direct. Like that's not the experience of most people. I would say a lot of people be like, "Oh, it's been really nice to meet you. Yeah, it'd be lovely to catch up again," and then they would leave ghost them, and then they.
Oh yeah, no, I never did that.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. You don't do that. But what I'm saying is, I would say out in the dating field, that does actually happen. And the problem is with that, you might think, "Oh, well, this is easier for me. I don't have to say anything." Like, you know, the person doing the ghosting, it's easier for them, because they don't have any more contact. But I think contacting someone and saying, hey, look, that was fun. I don't think we share the same values. Lovely meeting you. And then, boom, off you go. And then the person who got it was just like, okay, cool. I know what's happened. It was about the values, and that's cool. I might need to look for someone who has the same values as me.
I think it's respectful. I mean, that's personally how I roll. And I would always say to the person, oh, yeah, probably not interested in a second date or whatever because X, Y, and Z reason.
So when you're in that date process and you're dating, what would make that successful?
That date successful? I think being really present. The more present you are with each other, that means phones away, you're totally focused on the conversation and you're taking an interest in the person. In fact, it doesn't really matter what you did on that first date. Sometimes the fun of the first date, the better. You know, something not too serious. It might be you go bowling or you go karting or you just go for a coffee, nothing too serious. But I think being present with each other and really taking an interest, asking questions about the other person and their life, that's key.
That's a really good point. Interesting you said that. I actually saw a YouTube short yesterday, which was this guy going into a restaurant with a woman, and it was like a first date. And she went to sit down, and then he went over and went around the other side and he was moving this chair. It looked like he couldn't move the chair properly. And then she got up to help him, and then he pulled the chair out so that she would sit down and push it in. But then he went around and sat down, and the reason why he sat down was because the TV with the football match was happening behind her. And I was like, wow, imagine if you went on a date and your date decided that the football match happening in the background was more important than you. Like, wouldn't you just get up and walk out? Wouldn't you just be like, nah, this isn't going to work because this will just happen, you know, in the future.
That's pretty bad. What about you? What do you think makes a really good first date?
Look, definitely fun. Something different would be nice. I think we sort of go on the same first date, so there's nothing unusual to it. Maybe it would take a little bit more thought about it beforehand. Maybe in the texting and let's catch up and let's do something together, you might have asked some questions and got to know a little bit more about that person and then use some of that information to help you guide what you do next. So it's thoughtful, definitely present, like being there, really aware of what's happening, asking good questions, listening to the answers and then using those answers to ask more questions. But then also making sure that the other person's doing the same. So it's reciprocal. Maybe even finishing well, which is about that, okay, well, maybe this was fun, but maybe this isn't, we might not have really connected. Being okay with that, being okay with being rejected, saying, oh, sorry, you know, you're not my type, or I don't think we share the same values. Being okay with that. I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, it's not life or death. And you learn from that sort of thing as well, learn from each other. And I think it's successful if both people enjoy themselves, even if they don't decide to go out anymore.
I think presenting yourself well is good. So, you know, have a shower. Smelled good.
Regularly have a shower. Use deodorant. Brush your teeth. Always brush your teeth.
What about those who identify as male pay for the coffee or the meal? What's your point of view on that?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the first date, it should be split. Why should one person pay for the other person?
See, I've got different views on that.
Oh, tell me.
It was one thing I noticed about you, actually.
Oh.
In my book, it gave you like a boom boom.
Oh, because I split it on the what?
It's not that I expect the person to pay for me. I don't.
Sounds like you do.
It does, but I don't. I don't expect it. But if you have just stepped up and gone, I've got this, then that's a little bit sexy in my mind.
Okay.
That's a little bit masculine. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
I didn't realise this was a problem.
I mean, I might not be, this might be a bit old school. I will take that.
It's funny that that's something you remembered. Maybe if you ask the person out on a date, then you should just pay for it, whatever you do. Because I thought you were an independent woman, I was like, oh, we'll just split it.
Chivalry is not dead, my friend.
You know, it's funny though, because before we were together, we were just friends. And so if you got to the coffee shop first, you'd buy them. Or if I got to the coffee shop first, I'd buy them. True?
True.
So at what
I
point?
don't feel it's just me though. I feel like that's what you would do on dates anyway. You'd be like, you carry your own. You know, you're a female, but you can do it. Hear me raw kind of thing. Whereas
You're a bit old school.
I'm a bit old school. I'm a bit like, no, I actually quite still like that. There's some old school values. Like,
Well, I open doors for you, and I always scope out the area for thugs and villains. You probably don't know I do that. No. I do. Scope situational awareness.
so I went on a date with a guy once, and we went. I won't mention the place. Hopefully, he doesn't ever listen to my podcast. But we went to a place because he had a discount card for it.
Wasn't Macca's, was it?
And I was like, oh, that just seems like a bit of a cheap date. It did. I was just like, that's not looking good.
That's pretty funny, actually.
Then he talked about himself the entire time.
Oh, my goodness. See, this
Didn't
is
ask me anything.
not a thing.
I was like, yeah, okay, no, that's good. I'm done.
Wow. So this is like someone actively sabotaging the first date. This is how do you make your date as unsuccessful as
No,
possible?
I think just clueless about dating.
Well,
But
clueless
it's
about
okay.
people,
You know,
really.
I mean, we're all learning. Hopefully he learned from it. Hopefully he'd go away and go, oh, okay, I learned from that one.
Did you tell him?
Yep.
I love this. You're so direct. Sometimes it's like a combination of this thing I love about you and this thing which just drives me crazy. So tell me, what did you say to him? I really want to know.
I said, I do not think we should go on a second date. I think that we don't probably share a lot of the same interests. And
In regards to food?
something like that. It was just like, I don't really think that you're probably my person. Thanks for taking the time out to go on a date.
To go on a really cheap date. Did you mention to him the fact that he talked the whole time?
I did with another date.
Okay.
I can't remember that one actually, whether I did. But there was another guy, and we went on a date, and he was very nervous, and he was shaking his leg, and he was chatting. He said to me, I want a second date. And I said, I don't know whether I want to do a second date. And he said, why? And I said, do you know what I'd really love to see if we go on a second date? That you asked me a question. I asked you lots of questions, and you didn't ask me anything about myself.
And what did he say about that?
He said, okay, thank you. Let's go on a second date, and I'll try. And he did.
And how?
And improved his conversation no end.
Yeah, fantastic. So
And
it was a
hopefully
became a
carried that
dialogue.
on now for the rest of his days dating.
Obviously didn't stay with him.
No. It's a two-way conversation, though. It's not a monologue, like you said. And
No.
I thought, he was a nice guy, but you could tell that conversation was something he struggled with. So that was what my feedback was. I'm happy to, but, I'd like you to ask some more questions. And he actually took it on.
I think it'd be great for people to be able to go and have conversation classes, to learn how to have conversations. I feel like over the last probably 20 years with technology, it's taken us away from conversations to text messages.
Oh, my God, that would be fun to hold.
A conversation
workshop.
class. A workshop. Yeah, that'd be great.
That would be great.
Yep.
We should do that.
We've done similar things like with team building workshops in Bendigo where we're getting people who work in the same organisation together, and one of the main things we do is getting them to talk to each other. The amount of people who really struggle to have conversations with each other.
It is amazing that people really do struggle in this area of communication and having good conversations, good quality conversations.
But maybe it's not bizarre because, really, where do you learn to have these conversations? You don't. When you're at school, you're not taught how to have conversations. You're taught to answer questions.
True.
You're never taught how to have a conversation back and forth. To ask someone a question and then that person talks about it and you're listening to it and you're like, oh, that's interesting. And you maybe connect it with your own life and share that, but then ask another question, or that person then asks you a question. It's this back and forth. It's like a really good game of tennis, which is when there's a rally. It's present, it's on point, it's back and forth. And I'm not someone who watches tennis, but I get, that back and forth conversation between people is amazing. And I know that for women is when they get into a really good conversation with someone, that actually gets them excited.
It's foreplay.
It's foreplay, yeah.
For a lot of us, that's quality time.
Quality time, yeah.
So it's very important. When you've been on a date and it hasn't been successful and they've wanted to go on a second one, how have you handled that? Have you been honest with them about why you wouldn't go on a second
I
date?
feel like it's been a while since I was on the dating scene, so let me think. When I think back to when I was actively dating and asking people out, sometimes I knew in a conversation if it was going to work or not. And I think I know myself really well to know who I could hang out with. But then also I think sometimes I'd be really lonely and I'd just be like, oh, I'll just hang out with someone and be with them. And I think then I didn't probably sit with what my values are or what I needed or what that person needed. There's probably a lot of selfishness to it where it was just meeting that need of trying not to feel lonely. I think for the most part, if I didn't really get along with someone, I think we would both know it and then would be like, okay, thanks for that, see ya. And there was quite a few where at the end it was like, all right, see you later. And we both knew we're not going to see each other later. There's no chance we're ever going to have anything more to do with each other. I've had dates which we've had 2 or 3 dates. And then we just stopped there. It's just like, yeah, this isn't really going anywhere. How about when you're on that date, how much time should you spend talking about past relationship? I ask you this because I've actually been on a date with someone who spent a good deal of time, I reckon a good half an hour, shredding their past partner.
Too much.
Oh my goodness.
Always too much.
Is there any
Leave the past in the past.
Leave the past. So I feel that if you're with someone and they're just like tearing apart this person, they're like, oh, they were blah, 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 blah. I'm like, how much of that is them and how much is you?
I feel like you need to sometimes know a little bit because if they have kids to someone else, you probably need to know a little bit about that past, where they live.
You mean like how mentally stable that person is?
Possible. How many kids? Do they live locally? What's your arrangement with your ex and the kids?
That's like a third date sort of thing,
maybe,
isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe that kind of thing. Bagging out an ex ever in a conversation is never a good idea.
No, it never looks good.
Never looks good. It's not productive.
No, it doesn't help you. Feels like sometimes they'll do it because they're like, want that person on their side to be like, oh, that was terrible. He put you through so much, or she did this to you. And dating is supposed to be light and fun. And then when you get to know them a little bit better, then those questions come up. How do you get along with your ex is a good question.
It's actually probably quite important.
Yeah. And if they say, how did you get along with your ex-partners, or do you still talk to your ex-partners? That's an interesting one.
That's a good one.
Because that's one thing that's come up in our mentoring sessions with people who have kept in contact with ex-partners, and that's ended up creating so much drama in the relationship.
It has. That's quite common, and that's probably obviously not a first date, but it would be subsequent dates, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's still an important conversation, isn't it?
Exactly. Especially with technology now, it's easy to keep in touch with ex-partners. You might be connected to them on social media or whatever, and you might not be comfortable with that, and that's fair enough too.
And maybe it's about, rather than talking about the relationship, you might be upfront and say, oh, this happened, but it's more about how you've grown from that relationship. What that relationship might have taught you now. That's going to help you into the next. It shows that rather than sitting there being bitter about the relationship and having a little voodoo doll and you're sticking pins in it and you're like, this horrible person, you're actually like, oh, I feel I've grown from this and I've moved on and this is how I've moved on. That's probably a good thing to talk about.
I always found it quite telling how long people had been in relationships, like what's the longest amount of time they'd been in a relationship, because it's me that showed personally that they could hold a relationship down for a long period of time, that was quite an important question for me.
I think knowing each other's future visions is really important. You've got to be on the same page about what you're looking for in the future, don't you? Your idea of what will happen in the future for you or what you would like will obviously change. But if you have a similar trajectory, if you're both like, yeah, we're both looking towards retiring and traveling, or, being grandparents and staying really close to where our children are, these sort of things which you want to be on the same page, because we're 40s or 50s and we're just getting on a bit. So maybe it is got to be a little bit more careful.
I think so. You've got to be a little bit more direct with your questions so that, I guess, you don't waste time.
Dating is such an integral part of starting a new relationship. And people think back to their first dates. They remember the really bad dates and the ones that went really well. So maybe if you step into a date going, right, let's have a lot of fun, let's get to know each other. There's no expectations. All it is let's see how two people can connect and enjoy each other and learn about each other and see what happens from there.
Have fun.
Have fun.
enjoying getting to know other people.
Good luck out in the dating world. We have a speed dating event coming up.
How exciting. I'm actually really excited about this for people.
Bec is so
excited.
Bec is so excited. It's hilarious.
This will be so fun.
Yeah, it's called Meet
Come
Your
and
Match.
hang out with us.
And it's for people in their 40s and 50s.
It will be facilitated, so we will guide you through this process, so no need to be too scared.
Well, you can be a little bit scared, but...
No, that's okay. Be a little bit nervous, but with excitement.
Excitement.
Yes.
Find out more in our show notes. If you have any questions or comments, if you have struggled in the dating scene, we'd love to hear these stories, and we'll probably do another podcast about it. So contact us, comment, and tell us your best and your worst dating stories.
And in our speed dating night, we will have Alicia with us, who has some pretty bad horror online dating stories. So she was very motivated to do this in-person dating too. Come and find your person.
Come and meet your match.
See you next time.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks for listening.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Please reach out to us with comments and questions.
And you can find out more about us at rekindlingrelationships.com.
Or find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook.